I don't know if he had the job he has now the last time he was on with us, but I do know this. He's always approachable to the public that he serves. And that's one of the reasons that I've always respected Jeb Williams so much. Now, he has that job, which is head of North Dakota's Game and Fish. Let's bring him in. Jeb, congratulations to you. Absolutely great choice by Governor Burgum. And most importantly, it tells me that the governor understands the power of Game and Fish internally. So I look at that as a big compliment as well, Jeb.
Well, I sure appreciate you saying that, Joel. It means a lot, and I'm very honored, to be in the position that I am and taking over for Terry Steinwan, who's been in this office for a long time and did a fantastic job. But I always say, Joel, again, it's at the end of the day, people in North Dakota, they're not real impressed by titles. They're impressed by how you treat people and the level of service of what you're trying to accomplish. And so that doesn't change whether you're the director or whether you're a seasonal employee with the department.
I want to talk a little bit, though, this weekend. So I'm sitting there, and it's Friday, and I'm on the radio where I get a chance to interact versus the TV show here, and the calls start coming in. Everybody knows the Vikings aren't playing, and, everybody's like, what you going to do this weekend? And somebody texted in and said, are you kidding me? It's hunting season. And he's right. I mean, tomorrow I'm going to be out and about, and so they're out there, Jeb. I mean, they're out there. You may not limit out right away, but man, if people are going to go pheasant hunting or duck or goose hunting, my guess is they're going to see some game.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we've been getting some some pretty decent reports from pheasant hunting. Although it is a mixed bag, and we know there's some areas out there that are a little tougher than others, but we have been hearing some decent reports of some pretty good bird numbers in other areas. And then you mentioned ducks and geese. Again, there's some around, and we're kind of waiting right now, maybe for the Canadian push a little bit for the push from up north, and just to see how long we'll be able to keep some of those birds around. We know our habitat conditions in the form of water, of course, is not what it was, last year, the year before. So it's a matter of keeping those birds around. Might be a little tougher this year, but we'll see. Weather plays a big role in that, obviously, as well.
Does that factor in, Jeb, when you take a look at the Canadian push and you take a look at what normally comes down from the north? If they don't see our potholes wet, do they keep heading south, or do they, because we raise so much corn now, will they give us a shot at them?
Well, they need water, they need food, and they need, they don't need to be pressured constantly either. I mean, those are really the three things associated with what's going to keep those birds here, or what keeps birds around. So to answer your question is yes, with that, the lack of water and lack of habitat on the ground, as far as keeping some of those birds around, that does make a difference. There's no doubt about that. And so we'll see if we can get good enough weather to keep them here, kind of for that period of time. We might get fortunate to have some additional opportunities, but the possibility also exists where it might be kind of a quick push too.
Jeb, I went to the University of North Dakota, and when you went north of Highway 46, which for some that don't know what that is, in the Red River Valley, that means kindred, okay? So I am right at the Richland County, Cass County line, and everything north of there was no corn. There was no corn raised. And now, when I go up in that neck of the woods, heck, I got a friend in Peasic, I see corn. I see a lot of corn. Did that change the fact that when I was up to UND, all we had to hunt was either ducks, geese, or doves, and now I'm seeing pheasants where I normally didn't see pheasants. Was it all about habitat?
Well, I think there's been a lot of changes in North Dakota over the years when it comes to the cropping patterns and those types of things. Obviously, when we're talking about pheasants, habitat is a big driver. But, additional corn on the landscape has certainly helped with that as well, as far as, some of the food source necessary for those birds as well. So, yeah, there has been a lot of changes over the years, which has, been, some has been more important, or some has been more of a driver to wildlife numbers, pheasant numbers specifically, and some can obviously be a detriment as well in some way, shape, or form too. So,
as a legislator, I always supported the youth hunt. It wasn't always supported because there was a bunch of hunters right next to me who thought, the youth are going to get out there, they're going to get the big deer, and then of course that got taken care of. But the youth are going to get out there and everything's going to get wild after that, and that was a bunch of bunk, in my opinion. The fact that we were creating hunters and letting them have an opportunity before we hit the field and then showing them how to hunt. But by now, you probably have some reports of how the youth hunt has gone. Have you heard anything so far?
Yeah, each and every year, Joel, and I'll talk specifically this year too. We get really positive reports about any of our youth hunts out there. Again, whether it's youth deer season, whether it's the the youth pheasant season, youth waterfall, those type. There's lots of positive reports. We know there's a lot of clubs that do specific things on those weekends for those individual youth. You get a lot of volunteers that are associated with that. So lots of continuous positive reports out there, with the goal in mind being pretty simple, is give these young hunters that opportunity to where they don't have to compete with others during that specific time. And that's a pretty powerful thing over the years, and it has definitely shown to be a positive thing when it comes to recruiting youth hunters.
Let's look ahead a little bit, Jeb, to deer hunting. Let's look at some of the deer population you've seen. We were at a low a while back of licenses that went out, and people were having to deal with that droopy lip that they may not have gotten a license that year. And some of that happened this year, but not as much. Talk to me about the deer numbers and what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, overall, when we issued the proclamation, back in May, Joel, it was, things were looking good. We obviously went through the winter that didn't set our deer population back at all. 6th year in a row where we'd actually have increased the number of deer licenses. So things were setting up quite well. And I think overall, still for the most part, they are. We have had a little bit of a bump in the road with an EHD issue, epizootic hemorrhagic disease. It's a virus that is common in the southwest part of the state with white-tailed deer, and can be some intense local mortality associated with white-tailed deer. And that has spread a little bit further east this year, even around the Bismarck-Mandan area in the central part of the state. So we are offering refunds to those individuals in various units. But again, we always really encourage, Joel, that from what we know about EHD, it can have some localized impacts as far as mortality, but not necessarily from a unit-wide standpoint. So really encourage people to talk to their contacts and the individuals where they locally deer hunt and to find out that situation, because from what we know in the past, these deer do bounce back from these die-offs. It's not super significant over the landscape level, but it is something that people need to be aware about. And we always think it's fair to at least offer them that refund opportunity.
So when you say around the Bismarck area, are we talking about on the west side of the river, or have you seen some of this on the east side of the Missouri River?
We have seen some on the east side of the river, Joel. However, it does stop. Most of our reports don't go very far east of the Missouri River. And again, that's pretty typical. It's pretty atypical for it to even be as far east as Bismarck and Mandan. We have had incidents in the past of it, but not probably to the degree that we have this year as far as the die-off goes. And it's really related to our temperatures. That virus gets spread by a biting midge, by a small gnat-like midge. And October 21st or October 20th, just yesterday was our very first kind of hard frost here in Bismarck-Mandan, which typically that's 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago that usually happens. And then that ends that cycle. So, that was kind of the challenge this year. The conditions were right for that. And unfortunately, we've received a fair amount of reports.
Jeb, we're out of time, but I know, and I read North Dakota Outdoors, you encourage people to get outside, and all the leaves aren't gone. A good old-fashioned hike and a walk is something Game and Fish is always, encouraged. So I'm going to call you again when it starts making ice, serious ice, so we don't have, we get some reports and we don't end up with pickups in the bottom of the lake. How's that?
That sounds great. As always, appreciate the visit, Joel.